Welcome to Bumer's channel. Tonight, we invite you to dive into a story that has long existed only as whispers, yet is now beginning to reveal pieces of the truth. The uncovered relationship between Bruno Mars and Rosé of Blackpink is no longer just an ordinary collaboration. There are glances that feel too warm, moments that are too perfectly in sync, and a chemistry so real that it leaves many asking, why is their relationship so incredibly close? Is this closeness born from an intense creative process, shared wounds and dreams behind the glittering world stage? Or is there another story they have carefully kept away from the cameras? Every smile, every subtle gesture, and every quiet meeting now feels like a clue that can no longer be ignored. On Bumer's channel, we don't just talk about what is seen, we uncover why it all feels different. Get ready, because the deeper we dig, the clearer it becomes that the bond between Bruno Mars and Rosé may be far more special than anyone ever imagined.
1, 2, 3, 4. Hey, hey.
The story did not begin with a headline. It began quietly, almost invisibly, in moments that the public only noticed long after they had passed. A shared laugh caught on a blurry backstage clip. A compliment delivered too naturally to feel scripted. A musical admiration that sounded less like polite industry praise and more like recognition of something familiar, something deeply understood. For years, Bruno Mars and Rosé of Blackpink existed in two different musical universes, one ruled by retro soul, funk, and raw American showmanship, the other shaped by K-pop's precision, emotional vulnerability, and global intensity. On paper, their worlds seemed distant, different cultures, different industries, different paths to fame. Yet the more people looked, the more it felt as though these two artists were walking parallel roads, separated only by circumstance, not by spirit. Bruno Mars has always been an artist who hides depth behind charisma. His smile is easy, his performance is explosive, but beneath that confidence lies someone meticulous, emotionally attuned, and deeply respectful of music as a craft. Rosé, on the other hand, wears her vulnerability openly. Her voice trembles with honesty, her expressions often revealing more than words ever could. Where Bruno masks his sensitivity with swagger, Rosé lets hers spill into every note she sings. And perhaps that is exactly why, when their paths crossed, something clicked almost instantly. Those close to the industry began to notice how naturally they spoke of each other, not in exaggerated promotional language, but in tones that suggested comfort. Bruno didn't speak of Rosé as a global star or K-pop icon. He spoke of her as a musician, a singer, an artist who understood what it meant to bleed emotion into melody. Rosé, meanwhile, referenced Bruno not as a distant legend, but as someone whose music had shaped her own understanding of performance and soul. There was reverence, yes, but also familiarity. As time went on, the subtle signs became harder to dismiss. Their schedules, often impossibly busy, seemed to align more frequently than coincidence would allow. When they were in the same cities, rumors spread quietly among insiders about late-night studio sessions, private listening rooms, and long conversations that stretched far beyond business. No official statements followed, no dramatic announcements, just silence and the growing curiosity that comes when silence feels intentional. Fans, as they always do, began connecting dots. A lyric here, a quote there, Bruno mentioning inspiration, drawn from a voice that feels like honesty itself. Rosé, speaking about learning to perform with more freedom, more looseness, more trust in the moment. These weren't confirmations, they were echoes, and echoes, when repeated enough, start to form a shape. What made their closeness so compelling wasn't the idea of romance, at least not at first. It was the sense of mutual recognition. Both Bruno and Rosé are artists who rose to global fame while carrying the weight of expectation. Bruno, often expected to deliver perfection with a smile. Rosé, expected to represent an entire genre, an entire industry, with grace and restraint. In each other, it seemed, they found someone who understood the loneliness that can exist even at the very top. Observers began to note how Rosé's confidence shifted around the same period their names started appearing in the same conversations. Her stage presence grew bolder, freer. She smiled more easily, laughed more openly. Bruno, too, appeared lighter in interviews, more reflective, more willing to speak about growth rather than dominance. It was as if both artists, without ever naming it, were influencing each other simply by being present. And then there were the moments that cameras almost missed. A shared glance across a crowded room. A hand placed briefly on a shoulder, not for show, but for reassurance. These were not gestures crafted for headlines. They were too quiet, too human, too easily overlooked unless you were watching closely. The question that kept surfacing was simple, yet impossible to answer directly. Why were they so close? Some said it was purely musical, that Bruno saw in Rosé voice, capable of carrying the kind of soul that transcends language. That Ross found in Bruno a mentor figure, someone who embodied the kind of artist she aspired to become: fearless, timeless, and unapologetically authentic. Others believed it was deeper, that beyond music, there was an emotional connection born from shared experiences of isolation, pressure, and the constant demand to be on for the world. What cannot be denied is that their connection felt unforced. In an industry where relationships are often curated, their bond seemed to resist definition. No labels, no explanations, just presence. As whispers grew louder, both Bruno and Ross remained characteristically private. They did not feed the speculation, nor did they shut it down. Instead, they continued doing what they had always done: making music, performing, growing. And yet, every step they took individually seemed subtly informed by the other's influence. Bruno's work leaned further into emotional nuance. Rossi's artistry embraced bolder musical risks. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between all the theories. Perhaps their closeness is the result of two artists meeting at exactly the right moment in their lives, when success no longer felt like enough, and authenticity became the ultimate goal. In each other, they may have found not an answer, but a mirror that reflects both strength and vulnerability, confidence and doubt, joy and exhaustion, the kind of mirror that doesn't judge, but understands. And so the story continues, unresolved and quietly unfolding. No grand reveal, no dramatic confession, just two artists walking closely side by side, allowing the world to speculate while they focus on what feels real to them. As time moves forward, the silence surrounding their connection becomes louder than any confirmation ever could. In an era where celebrity relationships are often announced, dissected, and monetized within minutes, Bruno Mars and Ross seem to move in the opposite direction, protecting something by refusing to name it. That restraint alone has only deepened public fascination. Why guard it so carefully if it were ordinary? Industry insiders quietly note how rare it is for two artists of their magnitude to find genuine ease with one another. There is no visible competition, no subtle power play, no need to dominate the narrative. When Bruno speaks, Ross listens with full attention. When Ross shares, Bruno responds not as a superstar, but as a fellow artist who truly hears her. That balance, so difficult to maintain at the top, suggests trust built over time, not convenience. Fans have also pointed out how their musical philosophies seem to be converging. Bruno, once known primarily for showmanship and groove, now emphasizes emotional honesty more openly. Ross, long admired for her sensitivity, has begun to explore confidence and spontaneity with greater boldness. It's as if each has gently pushed the other toward a fuller version of themselves, without force, without demand. And yet, despite all the clues, there is still no definitive answer. No statement confirming romance. No denial framing it as just work. Only continuity, only consistency, only the quiet sense that whatever exists between them is intentional and meaningful, enough to be protected from public consumption. Perhaps that is why their closeness resonates so deeply. It feels real in a world saturated with performance. It feels human in an industry obsessed with image. Whether their bond is rooted in friendship, artistic kinship, or something more intimate, one thing remains clear: it is not shallow, and it is not accidental. As audiences, we may never be invited fully inside that space. And maybe that is the point. Some connections are not meant to be explained, only felt through the music that changes, the confidence that grows, and the subtle ways two lives begin to echo each other. Until then, The story of Bruno Mars and Ross remains open-ended, still unfolding, still undefined, and perhaps more powerful because of it.